because when I came home after 8 years, I paroled out to my brother's walk-in closet.
I still got 3 years of parole left.
It's Bren. Welcome to another edition of From Felon to Fabulous. Izzy's out today, but we got Ryan Ramey with us. He's going to fill in. And then we have this fantastic guest here, Derek Hawes. And he's going to talk about his testimony, his story, and probably going to give some good news somewhere along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No use in speaking if we're not speaking about truth and life. Right?
That's right. Absolutely. So with that, I'm just going to let you start.
All right. Well, I'm truly honored to be here. This is really exciting. I got the news from my bro Joe about 2 weeks after I was ordained, which has been a journey. We'll get into that. But he said, I have a friend who has a podcast that I think you would be a really great fit for. So yeah, we set the groundwork. And, in Revelations 12, verse 10 and 11, it says that we overcome the enemy by the blood of the Lamb and the power of our testimony. And to have the Bible tell us that our testimony of what God has brought us through is equal with the blood of the Lamb as far as the salvation, that just means we should be getting out there and telling people.
Absolutely. Well, the Bible also says that the second coming of Christ is not going to happen until everybody has heard.
That's right. Yeah.
Every
tribe and every
what do you
nation.
think's going on with the internet and all the phones and all of the stuff that's going on? So I mean, every day we're closer anyways, but with the technology, I think we're getting super close.
Yeah.
Don't know the time of the day.
Mm-mm.
Just be prepared. That's it. Got to be prepared.
Go ahead.
Derek, you did some time.
I did.
Let's go there first.
Okay. So I grew up in a very abusive household. There was physical abuse, there was mental abuse, and then outside of the house, I experienced sexual abuse. And my father being probably Asperger's, although never diagnosed. My mother was chemically imbalanced. So she had, the big blow-ups. Everything would be calm for a while. She'd get medicated. And then the next thing, she didn't need her medicine anymore. And we were just holding on and waiting for the day. Unfortunately. So my dad's answer to that was drug use. That's what he would do to cope with mom's blow-ups. And so when he saw how her behavior was affecting me, he actually introduced me to some pretty serious drug use at about 8 years old. And it sounds awful.
Sometimes people hear that story or people hear that age and they don't believe it. But I just lost a cousin at the age of 7, started using drugs. And at the last 5 years of his life, he was clean and because he got saved, but it ruined his heart. So he died at 30. We just buried him last weekend.
Oh, God bless him. Yeah, and people, they react to that and they go, how can you get an 8-year-old on drugs? Well, and that's why we're pretty firm believers that Dad was on the spectrum somewhere, because for him, that was the solution to a problem. And he saw me experiencing the same problem and said, well, here's the solution.
Yeah.
So it was a long road of addiction and a lot of complex PTSD is what they call it now. I guess I hate putting labels on stuff, but legitimately, night terrors and things like that. And at the end of the day, what it boiled down to was I hated to go to sleep bad things happened when I went to sleep. You would wake up to mom having one of her episodes, and being an Army brat, there were a lot of times that you go to bed with all your friends and all your world intact and find out the next day you were moving across the country.
I was raised an Army brat, so I completely get it.
So the whole going to sleep thing was awful for me. So I tried not to for 35 years.
Which is not healthy.
No, it's really not. And of course, eventually when you're using drugs for that long a time, it's going to lead to legal problems. No matter how good you are. It's going
to catch up to you.
It's going to catch up to you. I stayed on Missouri's most wanted list for just over 5 years. I used to laugh driving by my billboard.
How did you manage that?
Well, I mean, I hate to give tips to help people be better criminals, right?
Wow. Yeah, let's don't go there.
I learned all the secrets that are in my book. I learned in prison. So.
Yeah. But I think the long and short of it is, I learned a long time ago, actually, that if you look like you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, people will assume that you are. And if you look like you're doing something that you're not supposed to be doing, people will assume that you are. So you don't drive around at 2:00 in the morning. You know, you actually check your headlights on your car and make sure they all work, and you use your turn signals and you go. I mean, what's some of the silly stories we heard, right? Oh, if you don't speed, they'll know you're doing something wrong. No, dummy, that's not how it works.
So case in point, 3 miles per hour, 5 miles, you're fine.
Yeah. So, for 35 years, I had a strict rule of only commit one felony at a time,
Wow, that sounds like a slotting system.
They just stack.
Yeah, they just stack. So literally, my wife and I used to drive by in the morning to her work. Yeah. We'd drive by a billboard, with my face on it, and the reward got up to $25,000 at one point, and I thought,
you got anything?
Man, can I turn my?
Can I double down?
Can I turn myself in and get that? 2 years, come out with 25.
Everybody's got to have a goal.
That's right. That's right. So yeah, the drug use eventually led to arrests, and they wanted to get me for trafficking charges and never got anything to stick. But I did end up with some possession charges, and because
they'll make something stick.
They'll make something stick. And then because I stayed on the run so long, the last time I went to prison, I had a 774 run wild. So I was looking at, with third time down and my 774 backing each other up, I was looking at 14 years before I was even eligible to walk out of the gates.
Well, hey, I was looking at 30. I mean, come on, you need to step your game up.
Well,
Well, one thing I want to plug in there real quick, and because I don't want to, we can go really deep on that side, which I want to. However, one thing I think it's important to even people who have not been to prison need to understand: you can be in a jail without being, or in prison, not being physical, as far as like with the gate shut, but they are shut because of yourself, the things that you're around, that you're going through in life. So you're in your own prison. And the only way that we really know how to get out of that is to step into the light. And that's one of the things that you see a lot of people, even nowadays, adults, they live in their own cell, their own prison, and the door can be open, but they choose not to. So I think it's important that, you were saying at 8 years old, these are the experiences that you had. You were in prison at that point in time in your mind.
I was. And even during that time when you're on the run, when you know that you've got warrants out for you, you're not living anything close to your best
nothing
life.
Quality.
No. So every interaction, every time you pass a police car, every time honestly, the world's come a long way now. We're on a camera now, and probably been on 13 of them this morning going to get a cup of coffee. But there was a time when that wasn't that common.
Right.
And I'd walk into a store and they'd have a security system, and I'd just turn around and leave. Because I didn't know.
Now you don't even see them.
Right. Now they've gotten way slicker about it. But you are in the prison in every decision that you make, in every, you think about a traffic accident, a minor, somebody runs into you at a stoplight, doesn't even damage the car, but what the consequences of that are. And so you're not living free. You're not living free. And I was blessed on my second trip to prison. I got put in just before Christmas, and in the Missouri State prison system, one of the amazing ways that God works is that you are not allowed any personal items for about your first 3 months. No pictures, no letters from home, no anything. But you are allowed to have a Bible. The Bible is the one thing you're allowed to have. So for 23-1, you're locked 23 hours a day. You're locked in your cell. And it's you and a Bible. And so that was pretty powerful. And
especially if that's all you got to read.
Absolutely. So after about 2.5 weeks of that, about reading actually through Acts, you were talking about Paul earlier. And Acts stood out to me because of all the prison and jail and everything else that Paul did.
Except for he did his for different reasons.
Yeah, he did his for different reasons.
And even when the jail cell opened up, he's like, no, I'm staying right here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I kind of have a little Paul in my story too, but we'll get to that. So on Christmas Eve, nearly 8 years ago now, I gave up. I gave up to Jesus Christ. And I said, look.
In the jail cell?
In the jail cell, in the prison cell, actually. It was at the point where I'd been reading his word, and I realized at that moment that not only did I not own anything down to the underwear I was wearing, I wasn't even the first guy to wear those underwear.
That's
and that's when I went, that's pretty much nothing. I don't know what everybody else's rock bottom is, but for me, I had lost my wife. I had lost relationships with my sons, had lost my business, lost all of the toys that you acquire living in that lifestyle.
the things that you think matter.
The things that you think, the things that you surround yourself trying to say, I'm successful, right? I'm winning. All of those were gone in a flash. And not even owning your own underwear, and then not being the first guy that was ever in those
And
underwear.
technically, when you're in custody, you don't even own yourself.
Right.
You belong to them.
That's right. And something clicked in my brain that if I'm going to be owned, which was something that I fought very hard against, I would way rather be owned by the Lord Jesus Christ. You know, if I'm going to be a slave to anybody.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. So I gave my life to him on Christmas Eve on a prison cell in somebody else's underwear.
Reusable. Wow.
It is what it is.
And
socks too.
And it was beautiful, actually, my time of incarceration, but that was a pretty short stint. That was only about 6 months. I had a treatment that was assigned by the court. And I actually, even in reception battalion, every night after lights out, when they locked us down, I would read out of Acts through my prison door. And I can remember one night about 3 weeks in, I got in my box a little bit about a bad phone call or whatever it was. And I just went to bed. I wasn't going to read. I was mad. And like 7 of the guys in my block called out and like, come on, man. You're supposed to be doing Acts 13 tonight. I'm like, oh.
So you got up and did it?
I got up and did it.
When the call is there, you got to
That's right.
step in.
Well, you know, you don't get a lot of feedback in a place like that. And I didn't even know, I thought maybe I was making some people mad. They just couldn't do anything about it because they were locked down too.
I want to talk about becoming the better you. We all want to become better versions of ourselves. You know, I met Brenda Ringwood, who started becoming the better you here a few years back. And I heard her story of how she went through so much obstacle, but yet that did not define her. She pushed forward and had massive success, and then started helping people around the country through her events about becoming the best version of themselves. And I resonate with that so much in so many ways, from my journey as an entrepreneur, from literally losing everything, almost going bankrupt, to making millions, losing millions. And now I feel like I'm a pretty good stride here at CEO as Big Brand Ventures and really helping grow businesses. But I look at all the entrepreneurs we work with. I look at people starting out. I look at people from all walks in life. They need somebody to really coach them and help them become the best version of themselves. And that is what BTBY does. So if you're a person watching this right now and you need help, you need support, you need, even if you're a successful entrepreneur that is looking for something more, that Becoming the Better You is an organization that can really help you. I endorse it. I've been to their events. I've spoken at their events. I've worked with their team, and I've seen what they can provide. So check it out. I highly endorse it. And maybe I will see you in one of their next events.
What's the excuse you've been telling yourself? And what if today you stopped believing it?
What would your life look like if no excuses became your new standard?
Are you ready to become the version of yourself that doesn't need an excuse to succeed?
What's holding you back? And is it real or just an excuse in disguise?
Who could you become if you stopped making excuses and started making moves?
What would happen if you made room for growth instead of giving power to your excuses?
Is your excuse bigger than your purpose? Think again.
How long will you let your excuses write your story?
What if your breakthrough is on the other side of your best excuse?
What are you willing to let go to make space for your greatness? No excuses.
ComeChangeYourLife.com.
BTBY.
And so, yeah, that led towards me finding Disciple Christian Motorcycle Club, which has been an amazing blessing because it's men from all of those walks. I mean, we probably have 20% of the men are pastors in some denomination or another. I actually entered my ordination training through one of the men in the club and trained with him for almost 2 years, theology classes and doctrine classes. And so now, I get to be hanging out with other men that look like me and sound like me.
And there's
have
something to be said about that.
There is.
There's a connection.
And God makes warriors that way, right? Like what we've been through, the incarcerate, most people don't really understand what it is when the door closes the first time.
No. Or the second time.
Or the second time.
Or the third time. Or
I know
the
when I
100th time,
came
because that
out.
closes a couple times a day.
Yeah. I know when I came out, I couldn't walk by a door without turning the door on. I didn't have to go
Make
through
sure it
it.
wasn't locked.
I just wanted to be able
to
to
get out.
knowing that I could.
That's an interesting trigger.
Yeah. Yeah. It
So
was
how
probably
much total
4 or 5
time
months.
did you do?
About 3.5 years total in 3.
So you still got to up your game. I got you beat.
I know. I was.
Wow.
So-
I'm glad I'm not in this competition. folks.
Yeah.
I am so glad.
It's an awful game to win. So I went down, they were talking about 14 to 18 years, 14 before I was eligible, but God, right? And at about just over 2 years, they said, you got a parole board. I said, no, I don't. Y'all are thinking about somebody else. Like maybe on the first charge, but then I've got another one coming. And when I get done with that, I've got another one coming. So, but that's not what God had planned. Because I really believed that when I got out of prison my second time, I was saved, but I had no support system.
And
so
that is the problem with many people.
it really is.
And prison does not set you up to succeed.
No. Missouri state prisons have a 94% recidivism rate. So for people who don't understand what that means, out of 100 men that get out of prison today, men or women, within 3 years, 94 of them will be back in prison.
Yep, because they don't know how to operate on the outside. They don't have support. They don't have great jobs. They don't have.
That's right.
So they go back to what they do have, which is what they know.
Well, and that was exactly it. I got out and I got the awful little parolee apartment that was right beside all of the other parolees and all of the,
But here's the thing it drove me nuts. You're not allowed to associate with anybody, but they put you in the community with everybody. So what are you supposed to do?
Right.
Yeah.
So even if you're trying to get right, that guy's not, and that girl's not. And so you're surrounded by it. I was working an awful job. At 44 years old, I was carrying hod for 3 brick masons, which is like, that's a tough job for a 20-year-old. And between probation fees, everything that I had to do, I had a $350 apartment, so that'll tell you how lovely it was. It was about half the size of this
bugs
room.
Were free.
Oh yeah, all of them you wanted. Never found a great recipe for them though, even if you made them in a brick.
Oh, hot sauce will fix anything.
And working my tail off, and I had about $113 a week to do everything that I was supposed to do in the world with. And rent was $350. So you're leaving me about $83 a
Right.
month to live on.
And you would think that your parole people would know that.
Right.
Probation and parole should understand this. This is what they do. And sometimes they don't.
So, eventually, instead of going and paying your bills with your check, you take your check up to the city and you invest it poorly, but you invest it and you get great returns on it. And then you're back off and running. And so between my second and my third prison stay, there was only 4.5 months. I couldn't do the work. I couldn't do any more. I was doing everything I could.
What changed? I know the answer, but remind them what changed on your last stint.
So on my last stint, because I thought I was in there for 14 years, God and I really came to, we had to come to Jesus. And I said, it occurred to me, it's great to have all the Bibles in prison, but most of the ones that we got in there were King James Version.
So they're hard
The
to read.
these and the thous.
The these and
the
that.
whereas.
I'm blessed to be educated enough that language was not a barrier for me. But having been in the
It's
system, the
discouraging.
average education level in there is probably 8th or 9th grade ish. And so there's
They
a
also
lot
have
of
a quitter mindset.
right. And there's a lot of men with this word in front of them, and they can't make heads or tails of it. But I can. So I thought, okay, this is my mission field for the next 14 years, and I'm okay with that. If it's explaining to these younger guys what's going on. And so I got myself on the captain's list in the prison. And that meant that I could go to about 6 chapel services a week. This was before COVID. So we had all of these visiting ministers, and you had Pentecostals and Baptists and Church of God, and just, you have to sort the wheat from the chaff, right? But
You do.
it gave me an amazingly rounded theological exposure in that 2 years. To go to 6 services a week, nearly every week for 2 years it's an education you couldn't pay for. And then you still got 10 or 12 hours a day in your cell with your Bible.
That's what I tell people. It is the experience if you use it right. If you do the time and not let the time do you, you will walk out of there educated. It might not be with a degree.
It might not be,
but you will
degree.
walk out of there
That's right.
educated.
Yeah. And so I broke down the Bible for young guys. They'd come out with this passage. I don't understand what wherefore and therefore and how for. And so we just break it down into English and make it more palatable for them. And I thought, if this is God's plan for me for the next 14 years, this isn't so bad.
It's a paid mission field. Technically, you're getting 3 hots and a cot.
Right. I mean, if you told an average, say, unmarried Christian that I got a place where you can do 10 hours a day of Bible study, you can have a chapel service every day, you can watch men truly give their lives to God where it means something. And people don't understand, right. People don't understand what a target it puts on your back in prison to stand up and say, no, I'm living a Christian lifestyle, especially as a third-time loser with a bit of a reputation. I had to break.
I know lots of multiple-time losers that are not in a prison cell.
Yeah.
You don't have to go to prison to be one.
No, you do not. So to separate yourself from that and say, no, guys, I'm walking. They don't have to stay. I'm walking a different path. It does put a target because, there's the whole save not soft thing, right? And if you're soft in prison, you're gonna have a problem.
And turning the other cheek.
Turning the other cheek, right? So staying true to God's word in an environment where you actually, most of us as Christians in the modern age, we don't face physical danger, persecution for proclaiming Christianity. No. That's not true in prison.
No.
It's not true in prison.
I never experienced really discrimination until I went to prison.
Yeah.
So I was privileged white girl growing up. My dad was an Army officer. I'm an only child, so I didn't have the struggles that most people have. But my parents always taught me to treat people with respect, no matter what they do for a living, no matter what their color is, no matter what language they speak. But I did that. But in prison, there's some lines drawn.
There are some lines drawn. Yeah.
The gloves are coming off.
They are. And it's not just color. It's status is in prison. There is status in prison. There is classism in prison. I don't know how else to say it. It's not really classism, but there's different levels. And then there is racism. And then there is the judgment on religion.
There is. And so experiencing a little bit of that. I like to make a joke with the people at my church because it's a fairly affluent church in St. Louis, and they talk to me about why I'm fired up the way that I am. And I said, okay, so I got the privilege of going to 6 church services a week, but that came with a caveat. There was a 50% chance that you were going to have to submit to a full strip search on your way in.
Yeah.
And then a 50% chance that you were going to have to submit to a full strip
Unless
search
you
on
knew
your
the
way
guard.
out. And so these
That
people
sounds like 100 to me.
Yeah. And so these people that are real dedicated about being there every Sunday, I'm like, how often would you be here if you knew there was a 1 out of 2 chance that you're going to get fully strip searched at the door before you're allowed to walk in?
Wow. No, I mean,
True.
that'll smack, that raises up smack you. So
Right.
we complain about, man, I got to sit there and listen to this person for an hour.
Right.
And you don't have to get strip searched.
You don't have to get strip searched.
And you're complaining about it.
To get a 30-minute
Wow.
service and then know that you're probably going to get strip searched. And one of the reasons they do that is the chapel is one of the places on a prison camp that people from all the different housing units come together. So it's a place that prisoners have typically used to distribute contraband.
Yeah, it's not a sacred place.
It's not a safe, no. Although I did see some amazing things, and there is
We
something
never had a
about.
chapel. It's just a room.
Oh,
And
okay.
everybody used that room.
Yeah.
For whatever.
So it was the whole general use.
Yes.
But to see 65 or 70 men of God singing their hearts out, when a visiting minister comes in,
Mhm.
there may not be anything like that ever. No instruments, no, because they don't let them bring in, but just leading out of an old hymnal or whatever that they brought in, and 65 or 70 convicts behind the walls singing victory in Jesus.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Although my
You raise your
pastor
hair
tells
up
you
off
we
your
sing
skin.
lies.
What's that?
My pastor will say we sing lies.
Yeah.
We do. We sing all them songs about what we're going to do and how we're going to do it and what we believe, and then we go out and do something different.
Well, and that's, I think, the thing, right, is you leave a church that's got 3,500 people, and before you get out of the parking lot, they're not living exactly
No.
what the pastor was just talking about.
But now
car.
he's got me thinking, what songs should I be singing that are going to be the truth?
Yeah.
I mean, victory in Jesus is fine. What a friend we have in Jesus is fine. But when we start talking
Sweet
about
chariot.
when we start talking about what we're going to do and how we're going to live our life,
Right.
yeah, we're singing lies.
Well, we are, and even in the Bible, it tells us that we're going to be known by our fruit, right? So you can say whatever you want to say,
Mhm.
but if you're not living it out, if you're not showing that fruit, then you're not showing God to anybody. I think that people should want to have what we want, and that doesn't mean going out and beating anyone over the head with a Bible, although I do some street ministry too. Just to present it, just to let them know that there's an
Your
option.
actions, though,
Right.
is where the true testimony is.
That's where your
Because
testimony.
what you speak is not always what you do,
Yeah.
but if what you do is outweighing what you speak,
That's
then
exactly right.
that's where
Yeah.
it's at.
And people are always watching you, and maybe especially more when you proclaim Christianity.
Mhm.
They're watching you at times when you think they're not.
Well, I
You
think
know?
that, honestly, I think that's one of the problems wrong with the church is we act one way, we do another, and the lost man says, "How am I different? How are you different from me?
Right,
Why do I need
Yeah.
what you got?"
right. Why would I want what you have? I'm living the same life.
And they see you as, at least I'm not a hypocrite. I went through that. I mean, I was raised in a church since I was 5. I saw so much hypocrisy that it turned me away. It didn't turn me away from God. It turned me away from the church and the people, because they were just, you're completely going, they act this way, then they act a total different way. And you're
And then they
young.
want to judge you.
And then you're young. I mean, I'm talking 7th, 8th grader. And I'm like, this ain't right. This is
Yeah.
not right. No, it just doesn't make any sense. And what it becomes, you become a lot like Pharaoh. You start to harden your heart. It's not because Christ did something. He's the perfect example.
Right.
But the examples we got in front of us, and I can't even fathom, you're in prison, you're going in, your example there, these guys have to be real because they have no other choice but to be real, because you're around, the hypocrisy can be huge
Absolutely.
and possibly get you in a bad situation quick.
Yeah. Proclaiming to be anything that you're not, or acting in a way that's outside of what you're saying you're going to do, is dangerous. It's just dangerous. there's danger in proclaiming Christianity too, and because there is a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes in a prison. So there are people that are trying to hide things, and when you come around, you're automatically perceived as a threat because they know they're not going to bring you into their little mess. So yeah, there's a lot of that,
or they have the fear that you're going to try to do the right thing and tattletale.
Yeah, which is yeah, we know how that goes.
Even if you don't, there's still that perception.
There's still the perception that when someone tells, because they will. I mean, look, Adam told on Eve, Eve told on the devil. The first two people on the earth told.
Blame shifting started right there.
That's right.
It was them.
Yeah.
It was you.
So don't come in with paperwork talking about, I can't believe
Blame
you said
shifting
something.
and not taking their own responsibility.
That's
Already
exactly right.
there. First two people.
First two people started that whole trend. Yeah. So two years basically of doing that, and they said, you got a parole board appointment. And I said, no, you got my name mixed up. I'm not eligible for a while. And, I kind of treated it as a joke because I knew I wasn't going anywhere.
God doesn't play games.
And they gave me a release date.
You're still not believing it, are you?
Well, no, it was at that moment that I went, man, wait a minute. It was 4 months from the time that they let me out the last time before I found myself.
If you didn't have confirmation then before, you sure got it then that God was real.
Right.